Alrighty. Welcome to the Business of Influence podcast with me, Leroy Mark.
And Tammy Rasheen.
And we're coming to you from brand new studios. We're upgrading our lives, guys.
I love this. How cool is this?
I did not be matching the painting.
No, these studios.
They're quite
Welcome,
delicious.
welcome.
Yes, we thought episode 5, after 5 episodes, we need to, change the house up a bit. Bring in a new couch, bring in a new fridge. So this is our new home, and welcome to it. And in this episode, we're chatting about pivoting, Tam, moving from the influencer cycle and going on to other business niches. Do you know the oldest influencer in the world?
I think you're going to tell me, but I must just tell you before we get there, pivot is my word of the year.
I hate it.
Reminds me of that Friends episode.
You know what it does? It reminds me of COVID. And everyone was like, we need to pivot. We need to pivot. And it was part of that very dark time in COVID times. But
so tell us, the oldest influencer.
Rumor has it's Marie Antoinette. It's Marie Antoinette. She made us eat cake. But in this episode, we'll be chatting to you about how you can make it through from your heydays of influencing into your later golden years, and also making sure you make bank. Because this is the Business of Influence with me, Leroy Mark.
And Tammy Rasheen.
See you in a bit. Welcome back. So when we talk about the business of influence, right, we talk about people who are currently in the business of influence, Tam.
Yes.
People who are Monday to Friday going out there, content creation.
Full time.
You know how much work goes into content creation.
It's madness.
It's crazy. And as with any other business, at some point you get to a point where you need to move from one phase to another.
Yeah.
But I put it to you, there's never actually been a full life cycle of an influencer. Like someone who started off, with their one follower, and then they got into being like macro and moved up, and then moved in their life journey, say from being a mom or a dad, to moving into management in business, and then slowly dying out. It's either they get dropped for saying something unsavory on air, or they just, get busy with something else and they move on. But we've never actually seen how people move from one phase to another, and
what the actual influencer life cycle looks like. What does that look like? It's a very, very interesting question, because a lot of the questions and comments and topics that are currently being discussed is, well, how do I even start? So there's how do I even start versus what does this entire cycle look like
at
from
the end,
beginning to end?
Yeah.
And we were chatting earlier how I view it from a business perspective. You have your infancy stage, your startup stage, then you go into your growth stage, then you go into your scaling and stage. So what is this what are the different stages and phases that influencers go through in the influencer life cycle?
Well, so for me, it's so interesting because, as you say, we always look at how we start, right? But we also, because being an influencer and a content creator is so linked to who you are, right? You're the product.
Yeah. And
by definition, your life goes through phases. I mean, you definitely aren't the person you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Your life looks very different.
Absolutely.
Let's chat about getting married. Let's chat about having children. Let's chat about starting a business, maybe ending a business, moving abroad, starting a different career. What does that look like from a content creator point of view?
And how that impacts your content creation and the different phases that you're entering in your life. Because what you created, let's say 5 years ago when you're the cool kid in your 20s, and now you pivoting into your next phase. What you created 5 years ago, okay, number one, might not be relevant anyway, but you as a person have changed and evolved. And how does that affect your content creation and your influencing?
So I've always been of the view that content creation should mirror your life, right? So while you are in your youths, you can do a lot of the lifestyle stuff, the fitness stuff. And even in the niches, you can then transition into other kinds of things. So for instance, I went to gym this morning and there was a lady there in her late 60s, right? And we were in the same class, and I was very interested to see how she almost instinctively changed every exercise to suit her capability.
Love that.
You know, there was one where we were lunging and jumping up and down, and all she did was she held the dumbbells
Took a
closer to
step.
her body
Yes.
to, you know, protect her
Yes.
spine, and then she kept doing the exercise. And then for me, that's what the business is all about the idea of content creation. If I say then, you know, we always take the lessons we learn from our current careers to our next careers. Like, for instance, I've done law, so I'm a lawyer by trade. I'm no longer practicing, but it definitely filters into many of the things that I do.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what are some of the things we learn as content creators that we can potentially exploit later on in trying to look for other avenues? So I'll give you an example. I've had to brand myself as a content creator. I've had to find what works for me, what doesn't work for me, but I also had to figure out how to advertise what I can and cannot say, the best practice for saying certain things.
Yes.
And now I can impart that to other people. And I found myself working in the green economy where I work with small businesses and almost imparting what I've learned with that. So
I definitely think, as this is called the business of influence, influencers need to treat their influencing career as a business. And it's almost like on the job training, or on the job experience, and you also learn as you go. We're going to be talking about finances in influence marketing, or even legalities and things like that, and that needs to be taken into consideration for even you know, the next steps in your career, or how you are going to be evolving. Because when you started out as a content creator, it was just you and your phone or camera and doing cool content. But now, as you expand, evolve, and go to the next stages, there's a lot more you need to know. There's a lot more you need to do and implement. And there's an entire business segment to the influencing career. So it's not just, let me take my phone and create content anymore. What is the business around that? And that needs to be taken to the different phases.
I think you said it in one of the previous episodes around how you need to learn your niche.
Yes.
And when I was preparing for this conversation, I thought about how you then improve in your niche, right? So let's use fitness for example. You know, when you're younger, your body just sort of takes on the stuff easier, and you can, you know, be toned and amazing. But don't we all? But the older you get, you start realizing things like nutrition is very important. And so you start doing more deep diving into how nutrition impacts your body, which for me, that's growing. You know, you're now adding a different layer and foundation to what your niche is.
Yes.
And by the time I think you finish the life cycle of a content creator, if there is one, you'll be able to have enough in your kitty. Because,
absolutely.
Yeah, and I think you said that, you know, because you've chosen a niche, you're almost building into what your future other work will be.
Yes. And something that I think influencers and content creators should take into consideration for the various stages in this influencing life cycle is, how do you expand? What does that look like? So yes, depending on your niche, but is it different product offerings?
As a business would do.
As a business would do. You know, what are the key elements that are going to get you from phase 1 to phase 2? What does that look like? Just as you would put a business plan together, what is your influencing business plan? And I think that needs to be taken into consideration, especially for those influencers who are really serious about this as a business, and expanding and evolving, you know, their personal brand and influencing.
I love that, because I always think about how once you've decided on a niche, it almost gives you the options that you'll be able to take the next step in. So if we use fitness as an example, you come in, you just, a content creator, maybe you are very big into fitness, maybe you're influencing for that. That could be, you could be, go to school while you're doing your content creation to get into being a physio, to being a biokineticist, to be a personal trainer.
But even on that, sorry to interrupt you, even on that, as you evolve, you could launch your own app.
Yes.
You could launch your own nutrition plans. Those are different, what I classify as different product offerings.
I see.
That's what I'm saying in terms of different product offerings. It would vary according to the niche. We could go into different niches, but let's just take fitness, and you're a fitness influencer. You've got your personal training aspect perhaps, or you a runner that's an influencer. Create these plans to expand, such as I said, is it a fitness app? Is it different meal plans? There's so much that one can do to expand and create these different product offerings, which are ultimately different revenue streams.
And they don't necessarily require of you to constantly be creating like on the go content.
Absolutely
not.
Because
what you're saying to me about if we're using fitness as an example, because it's always easier when we work on an example. Because I love the idea of like a runner, because a runner is a niche in a niche. You are a content creator you're a fitness content creator focusing on running. I'd love to know what kind of shoes do I use?
Absolutely.
Long distance, short distance. What kind of nutrition would I need for that? And that's
supporting injuries,
injuries,
recovery,
things
like that,
and international running. Where can you be athletic tourist? Is that a thing? Touring
perhaps.
for like Berlin Marathon.
Leroy said so.
According to term, okay. And that's very interesting to me that it's almost finding what's in your niche and looking at how you can leverage off the stuff that because you've invested the time in learning and figuring it out. So for me, that's the big jump over there. When we come back, we chat about how we can then diversify these income streams, right? And also some examples of people who've done it very well. So when we come back with the Business of Influence with me, Leroy Mark, and
Tammy Rasheen.
See you now. Welcome back to the Business of Influence with me, Leroy Mark.
And Tammy Rasheen.
We're talking about moving from the one cycle to the other of content creation, but also looking at how you diversify those income streams when you're no longer in the running to do sort of the traditional content creation. And I'm visited upon, Tammy, by some examples of people who I've seen really pivot from being just online digital content creators to really moving into almost brick and mortar businesses.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be nice for us to chat about the importance then of being able to diversify yourself while you're creating your content in your bankable days, and then moving into other spaces. I always think about Mihlali Ndamase, who's really like doing absolutely fantastic for herself, but she's already doing these masterclasses that people have attended, where she shares, because she's a beauty influencer first and foremost, and it's so great to see how she's been able to create a product, you see, completely separate but almost dependent on the other,
yes,
and being able to hold it up there. How important is it to have something to rely on while you're creating and learning, so that in later days you're able to almost bank on the knowledge?
It for me, it works hand in hand. Even if you're starting out as a content creator, still have that other aspect that, I don't know, for you it might have been law. For me, I'm just starting out and I've got business. And then as you go into the next phase, you take that knowledge with you. In order to expand into consulting, expand into master classes. You've built your following, continue to build your following, but now you're providing them with further information. I love consulting as one. Let's take Sasha Naidu, who's got her Lucia Aesthetics, I think the beauty bar, the beauty salon is, or the Smile Bar. You know, she's delved into different businesses.
She has.
Still in the holistic beauty aspect, of influencing.
And I think that's so great because Sashi for me is the pinnacle of someone who like went from one step to the next to the next to the next,
Yes.
right? Because she was casting director, casting agent, and a modeling agent.
Yes, that was a while
While
ago.
back, yes, and then she
Correct.
moved from there, and she's like, okay, cool. What is the next thing? But for me, the obvious question for me is how. So I always use the Harry Potter example. So when I got into high school, Harry Potter was just happening, right? So I grew up with Harry Potter. Harry Potter and I were like siblings, you know. And now when I read or watch a Harry Potter series, it's very nostalgic for me. But
Absolutely.
I promise you, my kids will never be able to read Harry Potter the way I want to read.
Totally.
But I'm looking at how some of the content creators have moved from where they are to where the next phase is in their lives. As a content creator, should I be cognizant of where my audience is in their lives?
Absolutely.
In
That's such a
relation to me.
fascinating one.
Because
For sure.
so I meet
sure.
Tammy as a 20-something-year-old. We hitting the clubs every night.
Totally.
And then like at 30, we all get married. Do we now
And then you're just having dinner parties.
you know? Do I then...
But obviously, as a content creator, you would analyze your audience analytics, and is it your 18 to 24-year-old still following you, or has it moved to your 25 to 34-year-olds? Where are people in their life cycles that are following you? Has there been a drop off now that you have started to move into your own different phase? It's a very interesting question that in terms of, is your audience following you, or as you moving, so they also, I suppose, moving in their phases, or you're attracting an entirely new audience. So you've got to and there'll always be that, aspect of changes in audience, but you also at a stage in the cycle where you're able to offer your audience more information, more knowledge in terms of these other products per se that you're offering. So it's not just the regular content.
I think you had it when you said authenticity, right? Because the authentic Tammy is going through different things. So, authentic Tammy was starting a business at 25, which is very different to being now expanding a business to maybe having another branch of a business, if we're using the business as an example.
Correct.
And your issues that you're dealing with on a daily basis today are very different from what you're dealing with 10 years ago. I mean, if we use an example where you're worried about like stock and getting whatever, now you're dealing with like, how do we carve a deeper niche for ourselves? How do we
global,
how do we get clients that were never on the map for us and really reaching in for them? And I even look at how, and I love the example you use about it being a business, because even when I was in practice, part of the things that almost discouraged me about staying in practice was that the older you got in the business, the harder you had to work.
Yes, absolutely.
I had to look for work for myself, and I had to find work for you as my associate, and I need to find work for Kensani, who's my CA. Whereas in conventional business, even in influencing, we start moving into more strategic roles.
I love that.
So
it's definitely more strategic.
I don't care if there's coffee in the office. I'm more worried about, do we have 2 new clients coming in so we can meet our
Speak to my
time.
team, they'll tell you. And especially the ones that have been around for quite some time, they'll also be able to tell you. But for me, it's taking those learnings. And often one forgets to actually reflect and see, okay, this is where I started. Even the mistakes. I often say to the team, it's okay to make a mistake. And as often there's so much fear in that. And even as an influencer, it's okay if you don't get the results that you were looking for. How are you evolving? How are you changing? What are your learnings? And it's always necessary to go back to those learnings as you grow.
I want to ask a question that might seem unfair, and I'm going to ask the same question of our guest, because we always have a nice guest. Brett Robson will be joining us later on, but later.
Got too much to discuss.
We've got so much to talk about. So chat to me about transition, right? So we've always thought that when we get queries coming in, I want to be a content creator because that's the goal. You know, I want to have 50 million followers and make big bank, and that's the goal. What about the notion that this space, as big banking as it is, as huge of an industry as it is, as a multi-billion-dollar industry as it is all transitional in the journey of the influencer for you to become something different in future? All right. So if you think about people who've moved on from content creation to becoming actors, right? Like Mushendiki, for instance, he
Yes.
became a very good actor, worth his chops in every way possible, you know. But he started off as a content creator doing skits. You look at someone like Alfie, who was doing skits, and now he still does them, but a major part of his business is emceeing and hosting.
Absolutely.
You know, and for me, it seemed like they found what they liked in the process of content creation, because, you know, the more popular you get, the more booked you become, and you go,
Yes.
actually, here's a secondary business I need to grow
sure.
from this one. So am I being unfair by saying that maybe this industry of ours is, you know, sort of transitional? You are here for a while, get your chops, get your skills, and then go and see where you can sow your wild oats, as it
I
were.
definitely think, look, there's no cut and paste model here. I definitely think that happens, that transitional aspect. We get a lot of queries in terms of influencers. Well, how can I grow? How can I expand? How can I? And I don't know, but I feel that people aren't really putting their strategy together.
Yeah.
What is their strategy? I have a passion for strategy, so I always go
Your favorite
back.
S word.
And the why. The why. So, you know, and really seeing what's working, what's not working, how can I tweak, how can I be agile, and those. By really reflecting and analyzing those aspects, that will guide you in how you pivot or change or move, because you can't just go and pivot and change and move and grow
Yeah.
without really sitting down.
I think it's so important. I think the strategy is important because it also allows you to charter your course with a bit more focus.
Absolutely.
You know where you want to go eventually and where you want to settle down. I've always said, like, talk radio is where I want to land up forever because I talk too much. And so in my mind, I'm constantly looking for gigs and work and content creation opportunities that allow me to speak my mind, to express my opinion, to be more than just a face, because a lot of my content creation before I started that strategy was, you know, look pretty, have a picture for Instagram, do the content. And now I'm like, I like the sound of my voice. I like the thoughts I bring out and the opinions I express.
Yes.
And so that's going to be part of my offering going forward.
Yes.
So I need to use the platform now and run that strategy so that I can
I
move
really
on.
think it's something we need to emphasize today on this episode is strategy.
Yeah.
That strategic thinking behind what you're doing. It's not a case of waking up and thinking, oh, I want to be an influencer and content creator and this is going to happen overnight. There really needs to be thought and obviously hard work put into it.
Oh.
But strategy.
And the hard work is intense. When we come back, we have our interview with Brett Robson. She's done a lot of hard work. She moved from being a content creator, massive YouTube following, to being an entrepreneur and having multiple platforms where she exercises her business and makes her bank. So we chat to Brett after this. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, retweet, tell your friends all about it, because this is the business of influence. Brett, you are a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, you are definitely part of the landscape of fashion and lifestyle in South Africa. You've got platforms where I was looking at some of the pieces that you sell that, you know, you retail, which are stunning, affordable, made for the every woman. And for me, the first thought that came up was, how did you even get into this part of content creation? I know you worked as a merchandiser at some point in your career, but you've been doing this for over 10 years. I mean, close to 13. Where did it all start for you?
Well, I studied fashion design, and that's where, I mean, I've always loved fashion. I was a teenager making my own clothes when my mom couldn't buy me clothes. You know, I needed a new outfit, so I made sure that I made the outfit. And that's where my love for fashion came from. and I studied fashion design and got into the clothing industry here in Durban. And, it wasn't, I'll be honest, it wasn't what I expected. And that's actually the reason I ended up in blogging, was because I got into this job in industry and I was like, I studied fashion design. I'm going to be a designer, And it was very much an admin focused job. And I think I went in because I didn't know what it was. I went in very blind and a bit of a shake to my system. So I left the job and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I was like, I saw all these people starting blogs. I mean, this was 2010. I started my blog just randomly. I was like, I'm going to start a blog and talk about fashion. And that's all I talked. I spoke about like trends. I spoke about Fashion Week. I spoke about anything related to the fashion industry that I was interested in. And that's sort of where my whole journey into content creation and sharing style and fashion and being passionate about that area of content creation came about.
Now that you sort of branched out and extended your purview, I mean, this episode is called From Popularity to Profit. You've definitely used sort of your content creation platforms to then venture off into other businesses, which are complementary to where you started. When did you feel that the shift needed to happen from just content creation to now going into business, and almost leaving that space?
For me, the shift really came about when I looked at my business and I realized that I needed to focus more on it and that it wasn't a side project that I was working on. Because for a very long time, in terms of my career journey, when we started Shop Brett Robson, or the Brett Robson brand, when we started it, I was still working as a merchandiser. I mean, I don't come from money. I didn't have anyone to invest in this idea. So I went to my boss at the time and I was like, I have this idea. Can you invest in this business idea? I really want to make it happen. Please believe in me. And I was fortunate enough that the company believed in me and partnered with me on this project. And we're still partners to this day and have a fantastic relationship, that is beneficial to both parties, of course. And, when it got to the point where I felt like if we're going to grow this business into something else, we sat down and we made a decision that I would need to focus on it. So I stepped away from merchandising first and foremost. That was the first step. And then after that, I realized that going to events out of Durban and spending, time creating content and stuff, which was stuff I would often do after hours or on the weekend. And sometimes I would have to take days off to attend events during the week. I realized that if I was going to grow this business and really, grow a team and manage it properly, I needed to step away from content creation as well. And it was hard for me because I enjoyed that extra income. A small business that you're just starting is not making any money. You're just a salaried employee. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose this like extra income that I was earning from content creation. But what am I going to benefit on the business side? I think for me, content creation was never going to be my end goal. It was always just something that I enjoyed. I'm still a content creator at heart. I absolutely love it. But I always knew this was never going to be a career for me. I knew what I wanted to do in the long run. And fashion is what I love. I love creating clothes. I love seeing people wearing what I have put, my hands on. And so that for me, more importantly, I always knew. But for some people, that content creation is just what they want to do. And I get that, a lot of people will put pressure on you and say, well, you've got to either still have a 9 to 5 and don't quit your job. And you still need to make sure that you've got this salary. But I think that some people can make it happen and can be successful. I think that if you really believe in what you're doing and you put the time and effort, don't think it's just going to happen for you, because I don't think anything just happens. I don't necessarily think it's the most important thing to have this, steady income. I don't think that you should be irresponsible by any means. Still make sure that you're able to take care of yourself and your bills and all of that. But, there's nothing wrong with betting on yourself.
So, Brett, I was very intrigued by how you really have gotten into your consumers' lives, right? The way you speak to them. I mean, I was watching a video where you were chatting about skims and some of the holes that you found, but also how you're using some platforms to get things delivered to you from the US to South Africa. And for me, I was struck by how like you speak to your viewers like they're your friends, and it got me thinking about how yes, you're not necessarily using content creators and influencers yourself to market your platforms, you know, Shop Brett Robson, Imprecca, and the others, but you seem to have given them you know, honest, wholesome advice. And what they do is almost influence for you by speaking on behalf of the brand because they trust it.
Well, you know, I think when we first started, so when Shop Brett Robson first started, I knew that the community that I was in terms of content creators, was going to help me get this brand out there. And you know,
Yeah.
it's great that I've got those sort of relationships with a lot of content creators, you know, who were in the industry at the time, and I've also managed to, I think, build new relationships with people who've come in after I have even left the industry. And so, as much as, yes, you mentioned we don't necessarily pay influencers to market our brands, what we have done is incentivize them through affiliate marketing. And that's where we have, I think, shifted to even getting even more content creators behind us. With affiliate marketing, we've really put it in the content creators' hands. You can make as much money as possible with us. There's no cap to how much you can earn through your affiliate code and your affiliate link. It's all up to you.
See, I like that because I even saw that you guys, you know, you're working with Usnim Mhlongo, and for me that's so novel because when we think of influencer marketing, we always think about it in the straight sense, right? That we give you product, we pay you for it, you post, and then hopefully we get some sort of, you know, leads and eventually turnover. And for me, that collaboration with content creators where they themselves are able to find, you know, a profit, to make money, make bank by being affiliated with you is almost growing the community. I mean, we chat about how this is a multi-billion-dollar industry and how it's growing in interesting ways. But for me, how did you even get that model? You know, how did it even spring up to you to have that synergy between content creators and yourselves? Because usually that's not the model that we're used to.
Well, as a growing business, we definitely don't necessarily have the budget for, you know, big marketing campaigns and that sort of thing. We're very much the type of team who does a lot on a little bit of like a little budget. And I would the team would send stuff out to content creators, and I just got to a point where I said to them, like, how can we incentivize these content creators to want to talk about our brand, to want to wear our clothes and post them, you know? And I did a bit of research and I saw, well, okay, affiliate marketing could be something that we should look at. And I did a bit of research, and more importantly, also, I think with affiliate marketing, especially abroad, a lot of the time it's just the content creator who's getting a kickback. And
Okay.
I wanted to also incentivize the customer to want to use that influencer's code. Because what was going to incentivize you to use a content creator's code, you know, if you're not getting anything out of it? So in order to do that, I also gave a kickback to the customer. So we're incentivizing the customer to use the code, and we're also incentivizing the content creator because they're getting a kickback from that sale. So for me, that was a big shift for us. And I mean, we've only been doing it, I want to say now in October is the second year. It's been 2 years since we've implemented affiliate marketing into our brands, and it's just been fantastic.
I think in wrapping up, when you look at other avenues of business and content creators trying to get into businesses, what would you say are the 3 things that they need to keep front of mind, to whether look out for or strive for, that has given you the 13-year longevity in the business, the ability to pivot and, grow the community and still remain true to your platforms and your values?
I think, yes, people can, you can gain knowledge and experience and all of those things, but running a business is not for the faint-hearted and it's not for
Oh,
everyone. And I
yes,
think
ma'am,
sometimes
it
we've
isn't.
got to, yeah, we've got to accept that if it's not for you, it's not going to be for you. And I don't think we should be putting pressure on content creators to say, well, you have to become an entrepreneur in terms of, starting a different business. Being a content creator is a form of entrepreneurship. And I think
Absolutely.
it's okay that we accept that and you don't put pressure on people who perhaps are not ready or who are not right to be running a different type of business. And thirdly, I just think no matter what you do, just have fun with it. Because if you're not happy about what you're doing, what's the point? I love what I do every day, even on the bad days. Today I've got a fabric issue with one of my upcoming launches, but I still love what I do and I do my best and my team does their best and we try to have as much fun with it as possible. And I think that is such an important thing that we don't often talk about or we don't place importance on.
We are so, so thankful that you agreed to come onto the platform today. We are so happy to see what happens in the next 13 years and see where the business goes. And we're so thankful you took a small chunk of your day to chat to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Leroy. It was absolutely amazing chatting to you today and actually looking back at some of the things that I haven't thought about in a while. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Brett. Yes, that was Brett Robson, entrepreneur, content creator, businesswoman, changing the world one platform, one garment, one life at a time. We go back to the studio after this. A big shout out and thank you to Brett Robson for the wonderful interview and me in a different shirt. I look quite handsome, I must say for myself. Welcome back to the Business of Influence, brought to you by Style ID Africa. You still hang out with me, Leroy Mark.
And Tammy Rasheen.
And the conversation is hot, eh? Like,
Ooh, I'm loving it.
I didn't realize when we started we go this deep, but my brain is buzzing. And I think that's the whole point of these conversations, that there's so much that's happening in the space that we just sometimes feel like we just have to put it somewhere.
Yes.
For you to enjoy it. So please comment, repost, let us know what you want to chat about. You can DM me and Tammy directly, but there's so much here and it really is an industry that's full of influence. Which brings me to my next point. All right. I was listening to the radio to a particular talk show host, but we're not in the business of trashing people. But I was so angered by how they were chatting around influencers, okay? And they're like, oh, we probably don't need as many of them as we think we need, and they were really just pulling the mickey out of someone else. And I really got offended because I think there's very big underestimation of how much work, thought, and effort it takes to do the things that we do.
They're from a brand side, and especially with turn-on campaigns, quick turnaround times, things like that. But the thought and time that goes into it, kudos.
They don't think there's strategy. They don't think that there's meetings and you're putting out fires on a daily basis, several at the same time sometimes, because of just how this industry is so dynamic.
Call me Mrs. Crisis Management. My middle name.
And for me, it's interesting because I wanted to share almost sort of a really practical guide of how you move from one aspect of your career to another. As I said before, I've done like the V or the U, depending how you look at it, where I wasn't a content creator at the beginning. I really didn't care much for it. I got into the space and found I absolutely loved it. And in my journey, I found myself now being on the other end where I'm now no longer necessarily content creating so it's not my 9 to 5 only, but there's now other stuff that really has been birthed. This podcast being one of them.
Was it a 9 to 5 for you at a stage?
Yes, it was, because I made the big decision to leave corporate so when I was in practice as a lawyer, because I found I just couldn't do both. And,
exactly.
And I knew where my passion lay. And a friend of mine said to me that there's someone with half the talent and more time than you who's making more money. Because you're stuck in an office for 8-9 hours a day and you want to go do quick content, at 7:30 in the evening.
Yes.
Where like Jabulani has sat and thought about it, and then he's gone to go see the venue. He's plotted it out.
Got his mood boards.
He really and what you put in is what you get out.
Yeah. That's what I'm struggling with at the moment.
Yeah.
Me and my 1,000 and something followers, but
follow Tammy.
For me, it's not about the followers at all. I and also the purpose of this podcast and why we started this, because I am coming from a thought leadership perspective,
Yes.
which we're going to dive into just now, and utilizing perhaps a LinkedIn as a channel
Yep.
as well. But for me, really, if I had more time to allocate to even writing,
Yeah.
let's just say for LinkedIn, it's not necessarily, for me, it doesn't necessarily have to be reels or videos or whatever. I do have a lot of information I want to put across from a reels perspective, short snippets and stuff, but I literally haven't had the time.
Yeah.
Unless I want to go on 0 sleep.
Which you're almost on that right now.
And I'm finding that difficult struggle. So hopefully I'll get there from a content creation and thought leadership perspective. But it really, to go and juggle that is very difficult.
I think there is a solution in there. When I left practice,
Get a PA.
get two. But for me, it's so I'll go back to my story and answer you in the long way. I started off doing law, and I got a little bored because also time is the one thing you can't make more of, and law, we sell time, so ditto. And when I got into content creation, there were times it was really quiet, like really quiet. Work was coming in a bit slow, and so what I did was I created the work I wanted. So my first ever campaign was, a friend of mine's a designer. He makes t-shirts and shorts. He's a real designer. He's a real designer.
Brilliant.
I said to him, make t-shirts and shorts. They're quick to make. Make them in 4 colors for me and my friend. And then we found a friend who had this cute car in similar color. And,
Yes.
and my friend's husband had a similar car. So we had 2 cars. And then we just drove to Melrose and took photos and posted them. And then brands started seeing that we had the capability.
Got you.
So we had the time to conceptualize
Yes.
and come to an idea and execute it creatively on a shoestring
you can
budget.
see that when it comes to influencers' content.
Yeah.
Whether they're working on a brand or not, just kind of slap on content, or I need a post, let me quickly do something.
Yeah.
Or the really thought out, strategized content.
But while I was in the journey, Tam, I found that there were things I really enjoyed about the content creation space that I wanted to deep dive into more.
Yes.
I love hosting. I love the idea of thoughts and running away with the thought. Let's see where it goes, which is what this podcast is about. Let's run away with the thought and idea and our experience and see where it ends. We don't purport to know everything, but we definitely know a lot because we've burnt our hands a few times. And then on the other end, I found that I was being approached by corporates to say to me, listen, chat to me about how I brand myself as an individual in a business. Tell me how I brand myself as a key opinion leader, thought leader in my business. And I found I really gravitated towards the green space, the recycling, energy efficiency, and all of that, because it's something that is novel, but it's something that we need to think about all the time.
For sure.
How many people are vegan? How many people are moving into using vegan leathers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so on the other end, I found that now I'm not necessarily just creating content for the brands. I still do, but I'm now really interested in like the other stuff. I want to know more about like, what do we do about content creation where as a man we can chat about current issues that affect children, women, what's happening in the Middle East right now. What do we do to have content creation where we can start speaking, truth to power?
So for you, is it being that vocal,
Yeah.
having that vocal aspect?
But I've learned to be careful because when
Yeah.
I'm working with a brand, I need to be careful not to alienate my brand or speak in such a way that it
Out
represents
of turn
out
or
of turn.
offensive.
Yeah.
Yes.
So for instance, I did a content piece recently where I'm like, well, there are things I don't like about what's happening in my country. And I've got these people who listen to me. I can responsibly bring an issue to the table and we can discuss it and see where it goes. And so what you're saying about, thought leadership, the things that are buzzing in your mind that you feel like,
Buzzing.
I just want to tell someone.
I'm going to write a book one day.
But maybe that's the interesting thing, that we now need to find the space to be able to say, you as a working professional, you are coming across ideas and things on a daily basis.
For sure.
How do we give you time when you're driving? How do we give you time when you're in the bath or wherever for you to dump that knowledge?
Yes.
And then we use it to fix it up. And that's another way of pivoting,
Absolutely.
and moving
Absolutely.
on. And for me, that's where it's come from. So, just to wrap up the thought about what then my content creation gave me was an understanding of I'm consulting right now. I'm doing lots of content creation, but I'm doing a lot more podcasting, a lot of more research. I'm doing lots of research. Never thought I would.
Yeah.
And I needed that.
So in terms of, there's multiple ways, and I think it boils down to the individual that's looking to diversify or expand. As you said, consulting, business consulting, brand consulting, social media management. Every single person is looking for a social media manager. Apparently there's shortages out there.
There's no university for them.
Let me tell you, become a social media manager, you'll get a job like that. Whether it's merchandising, anything that you can use your skills that you've learned and are passionate about to diversify.
People might think that we're advocating in this podcast for you to limit yourself to the work that is intrinsically linked to what your content creation niche was. What would happen if I decided to go back to law, for instance, and decided to be lawyer Leroy? What of this industry, as an example, would I then be able to use in my new professional space? Because I'm definitely not content creating.
Oh, that's a fascinating one. We actually did a webinar last week or the week before around the legalities in the influencer economy.
Yeah.
And that's a niche in itself.
Yeah.
So you could take your skills from law and content creation and merge them
And mesh it up and see where it goes.
Make a lacquer cake there.
And would I then also have to then move platforms? So I remember you were chatting earlier on about then they start moving into like the LinkedIn space.
Absolutely.
And sort of working in
LinkedIn, even YouTube, webinars, things like that. Absolutely, it would need to change with your direction that you're going in.
I like that. So even though I'm not necessarily content creating to make a bank, I can use my content creation to almost bolster my other professional life.
Absolutely.
Hey, I want knowledge. So much of it here. I think maybe in wrapping up time, what are the things that when we're strategizing, because that's the S word of the day, right, that we need to look out for, to do? So maybe where do I start my strategizing? And maybe what is the one thing I need to be very careful I don't get, lost in?
I suppose anything with strategy, number one, boils down to research.
Okay.
Understand the industry, understand understand your niche, as we've spoken about numerous times. Do your research on competitors, even if it's another content creator, not necessarily a competitor, but what do you like about what they're doing? How they're positioning themselves? It's almost your SWOT analysis as well. Going through that, your competitor inverted commas analysis, your positioning, and putting your business plan, quote unquote, and personal strategy in place. And my advice would be to have short, medium, and long term, and break it up, because then it gets just too overwhelming. And where the short term means, I know things change so quickly all the time now, but where the short term means 6 to 12 months, and so on and so forth. And then with the research will come new and innovative ways that you will see, from a trends analysis perspective, what's coming up, and that might interest you. I think knowledge is power, and the more you know and the more you research will help you put your strategy together.
I think the big thing about...
I answered that.
I think you did. I think use it as you would strategize for any big project. What it's going to be short-term, long-term. And I find that what it does also, it cleans up your perspective. It cleans up where you want to go for the next 5 years, even the brands you want to work with. It almost puts onto paper what course you're chartering. And, as it changes, you'll pivot.
Exactly. And just on that, with strategy comes channel segmentation. You could love traveling, for instance, and be a content creator that posts their traveling content on Instagram,
Yeah.
and a thought leader as well in your field, and you're publishing different content on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
but with your strategy, you'll be able, or you just love in the moment, fun stuff to create in your bedroom and then go and post that on TikTok,
Yeah.
you know, so, but with your strategy, it's, what do you want to achieve? What are your objectives? What is your positioning? What is your, do your research, do your channel segmentation, and really plot this out, as I said, short, medium, long term, and then you'll have a better idea as to how to actually go and execute, because there's no point in executing if you don't have a strategy.
I
And
think-
that's what I say to all the clients.
I think just to my only addition to that wonderful statement would, while you're strategizing for short, medium, and long term, also strategize for exit.
For sure.
How
For
you
sure.
how you either get out or move to the left or the right of where you are
On your cycle.
or on your cycle, and also to know when you'll do that. When you know, is it a life event where something happens to you, you know, get married, have a child, travel, new job, or when you've achieved a certain thing, or whatever that looks like, you know, when I eventually have enough followers to be able to start a podcast where I can live on a podcast, or
Yes.
I've, you know, got the job I've always wanted as an MC or whatever. You need to almost, so that you prepare yourself and work towards a goal. Wow.
So much.
Don't say we don't drop good knowledge on you. It is the Business of Influence podcast. I am Leo Mark.
Tammy Rasheen.
We've got so much more to bring you, but make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. This episode has been one for the books, I think.
I think so.
In our brand new studios. And next time we'll be chatting about more about the Business of Influence, so please make sure you stay tuned. But for today and for tonight, it's good night.